evening, ladies and gentlemen, and to our Simplicity Sunday family. We're so glad you're on the other side of our media time, and thank you for tuning in. Call somebody, let them know that we're on the air.
Yes.
We're on Facebook, Simplicity Sunday, WGNS. Meet us there. Listen now and listen later. Well, I'm Angie B. I'm better known as Angela Bingham, and along with
Angela Ponder, also known as Angie Renee.
and we are so grateful to be here as the Angies.
The Angies.
And God is going to lead us in many places and spaces.
Thank you, Jesus.
And our names are being called in buildings and in meetings that we know not of.
Thank you, Lord.
And we thank God for the nations given to us, because, you know, we're just here to simply say that you have to have Jesus to simplify your life.
Now.
And he has to be first. And the
Yes.
more we put him as a priority, he will put us as a priority, and we will
Yes,
find
indeed.
life as not problematic, but it will be our purpose to do what he has assigned for us to do. And only way you can simplify your life is do the plan of God. And then once you do the plan of God, you will know the purpose that God has for your life. Once you do the plan and the purpose, he will give you the perfect peace that
Yes, indeed.
passes all understanding, that you will not have to have a second thought what God wants you to do. He whispers, he still speaks, y'all.
Yes, he
He
does.
does. And then after the
Yes.
perfect peace, he'll give you his supernatural power to be like dynamite, dynamis, you know, just do the work.
Yes.
And that heavy weight, God's Shekinah glory, that kind of power that when people walk by you, they're healed. And that's what he wants to be on display on this earth today,
Thank you,
right
Lord.
now, right in you. And then when you get that plan, the purpose, the power, the perfect peace, and then he'll give you that passion that you will love every morning you get up, and you will know that God has something for you to do. And the best thing about that is you don't have to do it on your own in your
No.
own strength.
No.
Oh, that I don't know about y'all, but that right there makes me so joyful.
Yes,
Because
yes.
it's not my
Don't
performance.
have to lean on ourselves.
Right. It is about my praise, about the worship that God has already got the plan, you understand?
Lord.
Just execute. That's all you got to do. Execute. And then we thank God for all of this, and only he is perfect.
Yes, he
And
is.
we serve the perfect God. He's a great I am. And I'm going to say happy Labor Day to
Yes,
everyone.
yes, yes.
And we know that Labor Day was about the labor movement and all of that, and you know, changing wages. And the more I looked at Labor Day, I'm saying, Lord, are we still in the same spot of needing just that to be? Y'all got me. And I said,
amen,
Lord, how
amen.
far have we really come?
Right.
My God, my God, my God. And we want to thank God for Connor, one of the
Yes.
best producers in the whole wide
Yes,
world.
indeed.
Connor, he makes it simple. He does
Yes,
things
he
in a
does.
spirit of excellence. And we just thank God
Grateful.
for that.
Thank
you know,
God.
because
Thank you,
when you
Jesus.
do something like what you do, love it. So people can get I hope y'all can feel my energy, because I'm reaching out and I'm loving
Yeah.
every one of you. And we usually
Yes.
say, God loves you, and you can do something about
That's
it.
right.
You can share it
Yeah.
and show that same love. Let God shine through you. If you want to call in today, that number is 615-893-1450. Once again, that is 615-893-1450. And we love you. We have a show planned.
Now,
I'm
come
telling you,
on.
get pen, get paper,
Now.
and get your heart involved. Angie Renee, I was reading in the book of Leviticus, and it says, when you know something is wrong and you do not do anything about it, that consequence comes down on you.
Yes, it
God is the
does.
same God yesterday, today, and forevermore.
Now.
So if I were if anyone, if I can do something about it, do something about it.
That's right.
Whether they
That's
look
right.
like you or not. Justice is justice.
That's
And you
right.
fight justice when there is an injustice. You don't look the other way.
Always.
And
That's
so we
right.
just want
Ooh.
God to just use this platform any way you like it, Jesus. We'll
yes,
be
Lord.
satisfied. Andrew and I have lit the torch. LIT means living in truth and living in trust. And I pass the torch to you, my friend.
I just want to say, you know, talking about justice, that's biblical.
Yes, it is.
It's biblical. And we need to keep that in mind when we're out here helping to fight for those who are less fortunate and unable to fight for themselves.
Amen. Amen.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in for another Simplicity Sunday broadcast.
Yes.
We are honored to welcome back a familiar and deeply respected voice
Yes.
to the Simplicity Desk, Reverend Dr. Aaron Treadwell.
I just feel like we need to put scholar or something.
Look, we had this conversation. I was listening.
That's all right.
There's something about him. Bless God.
Yes, it is.
Dr. Treadwell is no stranger to this space. Each time he joins us, he brings not only his pastoral heart, but also a wealth of scholarly insight that challenges and inspires. He holds a PhD and stands at the intersection of faith, history, and justice. Tonight, we are especially grateful to have him with us as we reflect on the powerful themes in his recently released book, Tongues of Fire, Black Preaching in the Face of Lynching. This important work explores the courageous voices of the Black pulpit during some of the darkest chapters in American history. Voices that preach truth, resilience, and hope even in the face of terror. Dr. Treadwell continues to shine a light on the legacy of prophetic preaching, and we're so glad to have him with us once again. Let's welcome him back to the Simplicity Desk, Dr. Aaron Treadwell.
Thank you very much. That's all right.
Can we get an amen?
Ooh, amen.
Amen.
Welcome. We are excited.
Appreciate you for having me.
Amen.
Yes, absolutely.
Our honor.
The title of the book itself, Tongues of Fire.
Sure.
Black preaching in the face of lynching. That's a
Yeah.
powerful. You already know what you. Okay.
Yeah.
When a title is powerful like that, you know the content is going to be just as powerful.
So it kind of plays on this allegory from a particular play, and in that particular play, in that particular stage drama, there's this motif, there's this idea that pastors, that clergy persons, of James Weldon Johnson, God's trombones, right?
Yes.
There's a particular sermon where in the, because it's a compilation of sermons, and of one of the particular sermons in the book, there is an old Southern preacher, right? He's fire and brimstone. And he goes through this particular title where he says, ultimately, that God will set, these mischievous individuals on fire. And so I don't want to give too much. I want y'all to be able to enjoy the book and be, surprised and go through some of the dynamics within it. But there is an ode to James Weldon Johnson's God's Trombones in the beginning, and it kind of looks at a revisited look at what he was arguing. Well, many of the interpretations of that particular playwright was that he was coming from a place of Black respectability, or that he was talking and condemning African diasporic communities for being wild or sin or not going to church or this, that, and the third. But I challenge him to look at it a different way and say, no, these are people who are in the midst of, James Weldon Johnson was writing coming out of Florida, which led the country in lynchings per capita. This was an individual who was daily dealing with actions of the Klan and actions of other forms of terrorism. And so twist it and say, maybe this condemnation from the fire and brimstone sermon is not aimed towards mischievous, drinking, smoking, promiscuous Black people, but looking at the attack violently on Black bodies and the condemnation from a very, shall we say, Old Testament experience of Elohim God, of condemning and striking down those who are oppressing God's children, God's people. And so from that's where we get the tongues of fire, from that particular verbiage from James Weldon Johnson. And I look forward in this conversation to kind of talk about where that content all comes together from. So.
Yes, already.
Already. See,
just right out the gate.
I can just be quiet and just listen.
Me too.
I wish my students would do this.
Oh, your students
That's
don't.
all right. Well, they
Yes,
listen
this
in
is
their own
powerful.
way. Yeah.
This is powerful.
Yeah.
So what inspired you to write Tongues of Fire?
Yeah, I appreciate it. So in the academia, everyone's looking for their niche. Everyone's looking for their road less traveled. And the reality, me being an American U.S. historian, so many things have already been wrote about many different things and experiences, specifically in the southeastern states where we reside. There was a particular book that I had a lot of interest in. It's Tony and Beck. It's Festival of Violence. They're two scholars out of the University of Georgia. and they look statistically and analytically at that practice of lynching, and ultimately compiling statistics and numbers. They look for trends including different year spikes, the impact that agriculture, the impact that weather, the impact that government and political decisions made on how people were lynched. It's really fascinating. But one of the things that I found through there, I was the student who not just read the book, but read the footnotes, is I saw a lot of numbers that computed violence. It showed me that violence was there. They calculated 3,400. If you're familiar with the Equal Justice Initiative and the Lynching Museum in Alabama, they count over 4,000 lynchings. So we know that during this period from 1877 into Reconstruction to 1905 or 1915, depending on what calendar you look at, we know there was at least 3,300 lynchings, which is a public execution of 3 persons or more against one. So it's not just a hanging, but it could be from a public firing squad. It could be from other torturous methods as well. But nevertheless, we know the numbers were high. But that's all we got, right? We were just told that, like, all of these heinous, horrible things happen to black people, and let's move on to the next one. And these are the narratives that you found so often in what historians would call the historiography. In the histories wrote about lynching, it was often like, these are the bad things that happen. These are the bad things that happen. These are the bad things that happen. And so first off, me growing up in the South, and me having, even though my family through the Great Migration moved north, they were from Mississippi and North Carolina respectively. I mean, my grandmas, my great grandmothers had rifles and Smith and revolvers underneath their beds, right?
Come on.
And I always knew that growing up in the church, you have this weird paradigm where everyone's preaching to turn the other cheek and love one's neighbor, but then you go home and you see guns, and as a child, trying to figure out what do we do with this particular dynamic. And as I began to grow older in my research, I began to realize, well, maybe I wonder, because I didn't see the numbers. There were no numbers for aversions, meaning that someone was attempting to lynch someone, but it fell through. Right? That someone took some form of action. Someone stood up. Someone stood in front and averted the action from taking place. And so I began to wonder with my grad students. I taught a seminar at MTSU, where I'm in the history department, and we began to look for averted lynchings. We began to look for lynchings that attempted to take place, and a black community, whether it was like 1 or 100, stood in and stopped the lynching from taking place. And we began to find 10, 15, 100. We began to find a lot. And one of the most prominent spaces for the aversions came from communities that had strong black churches. And one of the dynamics that I found ultimately is these stories were most told from black pulpits and black pastors. And so many of these black pastors, it wasn't necessarily like subterfuge, but a lot of these black pastors were literally preaching, theologically on Sunday, and then a Sunday night they were taking their theology and also utilizing their Second Amendment rights and standing up for their community. They were protecting their temple literally, right, with what many would call Worcester rifles. That was the gun selection of that time. And so I thought it was an interesting dynamic, because what it did is it provided nuance to the terrors and horrors, but also it provided a sense of resilience to a community that, even though it went through hard times, they weren't docile. They did not just stand there and deal with the 4,000 atrocities within that particular era of Native race relations. No, these people were agents and they were actors. Many times they dealt with hardship, but I would even argue that at a very high percentage, there could have been 7,000, 8,000, 15,000 lynchings if they weren't for African-American communities, especially African-American congregations, congregations standing up physically to protect themselves. So this is these are some of the dynamics that helped kind of birth this research, this book that I'm coming out with.
I know when I was reading in the Great Migration, and I honestly didn't understand what lynching was to the degree that it was done.
Sure.
See, I'm thinking, hanging from a tree. My uncle even painted a portrait.
Sure.
My mom still has it right now, and he painted it when he was in prison.
Sure.
And he got out, and they knocked it down, and it cracked. And they did it on purpose, and they said, well, we'll give you some of the people that loved him said, "We'll give you money to get a new glass." He said, "No, I'm going to leave it just like this with a crack in it because that speaks to my history." And but when I was reading The Great Migration, it said not only did they hang them, but they lit a torch and burned them.
Burning was a frequented action in lynching for many reasons. It's a sensory form of execution. You can hear it, you can smell it, you can see it. And so a lot of these things are, unfortunately, also there is a really good work in the Southern Journal when they talk about that there was a verbiage. I know many people are familiar with the verbiage now of like a picnic, and how even though picnic is a word in French, which originally meant outdoor gathering, but it's been kind of commodified to identify this term slogan of picking someone for a horror experience, right? But when we talk about the experience of burning persons through lynching, it actually was barbecue, right? So one of the phrases that you'd see also used is that we're going to have a barbecue. And sometimes people through history would find examples of people would literally have like full-on barbecues while they did these great spectacles, as Amy Wood would slogan in her work, lynching is a spectacle, when she talks about some of the big major lynchings of 5, 10, 15,000 people. But also there are examples of persons literally skinning individuals, and at times even like smoking them in like a smoker and barbecuing their bodies and things like this nature. So very gruesome, very gruesome. And we could spend multiple shows, multiple weeks to talk about psychologically and ideologically and even theologically. Do remember, this is a very I'm trying to think of the best way to say, but this is a community specifically in the Southeast that is very focused on the passion of Christ, right? When we get to, I know that the majority of persons, even in Murfreesboro, right, go to church. And if you think of like the Super Bowl of the church, the highest part of worship is always around Easter, right? And what is the kind of climaxing scene of Easter? We are a people of the southeastern states who revolve heavily around this experience of the cross, right? And there's another dynamic there because you're talking about an individual who was lynched. And so you have a particular community that almost has a lore or a spiritual desire to experience the desecration of a body, to witness a death, to witness literally the disembalming of feet and hands and different body parts, and watching torture. It's very much a part of the culture, even embodied spiritually. And so all these dynamics come up to why people lynched and why people were lynched, specifically within the southeastern states. And I think the book does a great job of showing not only why people were lynched, but why people decided that they had spiritually no other decision to make but to fight back.
Wow. Well, you were talking about verbiage. Is there anything behind? I heard this. I just want to make sure that it's true, not just a myth. Good morning. And the good morning was not like morning, like how we say, oh, the sun is up. It was morning because we had lynched your family. So they were saying good morning to them as in good death.
I'm not too sure on that one, but a lot of the different colloquialisms and sayings are sometimes like regional, and so that's no doubt. There were at least, as we know, 9 reported lynchings, Rutherford County specifically, in Murfreesboro, or more of west side of the city. So lynching is definitely, Judge Lynch was frequented here, and so I'm sure that I have a colleague of mine. He runs now the Rutherford County archives. He was my graduate student, John Loto, and he's done some good work on some of the Murfreesboro lynchings. And I suggest maybe if you, as a listener, have some time and you're in Murfreesboro, go over to the Rutherford County archives and give Dr. Loto a ring and see what information he can give you if you're more interested in about the lynchings that took place here in this city.
That's good. So can you share your journey into ministry and scholarship and how those two paths have shaped each other?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer with, like, whether you're bivocational or even like trivocational, or you just got all the vocations in the world, you got to double dip, right? So I always say I teach what what I believe spiritually, and I believe spiritually what I teach. And so they really kind of work together, not against one another. And so obviously, me being in a public school, I don't teach theology, but we do look at the impact ideologically, right, that things like religion have on people. So religion not only encouraged people to lynch, feeling that they were, manifest destiny, but it also caused people to stand up and fight for themselves and run away, i.e. the story of Exodus. And so many of the ways in which communities interact with one another, this case is often driven by their religion. And I think one of the biggest lies that we tell as community is separation of religion and state, and that religion is not political. Religion is very political, right? It kind of leads and teaches us in ways that we should identify what is right and what's wrong morally and ethically. It also kind of guides in our decision making and ultimately pushes us to kind of fancy or have sentiments and positivity towards this or that and the third. So I think ultimately, kind of going back to the particular research in the book, it's really interesting because even again today you see many of the mass shootings. You even go back as recently as 2015 and the Mother Emanuel shooting of 9 individuals, and as uncomfortable as that made people feel, the reality is the African American church experience has never been truthfully anti-Second Amendment rights. And I think that, I'm not going to get too political. That's not the aim of the show, but I do think that sometimes individuals try to throw a large blanket over particular political stances, and the Black church has never been anti-gun, because the reality is guns have kept Black churches alive. Even when Martin Luther King refused to carry, he still had the Deacons of Justice right behind him, living in his home and walking with him. And King's ministry wouldn't have lasted more than 6 months if there weren't armed guards. Even at some of the smallest churches, mine included, right? Armed security is a necessity, and just to assume that being Black and a Christian is antithetical to guns, that's far from the truth. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're responsible. But one of the things I will say, and you find a lot of instances within the book, including there's a book, Negroes with Guns, that came out a few years ago that's really great. And one of the arguments in that work is that self-protection is not violence, right? And so a lot of these communities, Black Christian communities, may be anti-violence, right? They're going and starting or provoking helter-skelter race wars, these things are the third. But self-defense is not violence. And so a lot of these individuals within my book, they weren't going and provoking any kind of violent interaction, but they were in support of self-defense. And, if that meant shooting back, then that's exactly what they would do.
I know Felicia Jackson, she wrote her book on teaching and all these things that were her memoirs. And she was just at the station, and she said, people listen to the show. So she's texting in, and she said that so many lynchings were listed as suicides. And one of her relatives in particular, the newspapers listed it as suicide, and that was no surprise.
And so, and here is the caveat, because sometimes the words used loosely. Again, a lynching is a public execution done illegally by 3 or more people. So, I mean, when you talk about individuals who, and this is funny, this is something you don't hear of often, especially Great Migration, there are a lot of individuals, African Americans, who were killed because individuals felt that they owned these said persons. And when these persons would try to leave, they would just, sometimes shoot individuals in arguments. Obviously, as gruesome and horrible as a shooting is, it would not be considered a lynching. How about this? There were times, obviously, where there were kangaroo courts, and judges would just throw people to, sentence of death. But that was, in a sense, a legal execution. So even if there's a particular individual whom everyone knows under the sun was innocent, that public execution, especially the gallows, even though they're publicly at the gallows, if a judge sentenced them, that would not be considered a lynching. And so, again, even the terminology, I think it would be more inclusive to just talk about overall violence instead of just using the word lynching. I think that's what we often go to. But lynching is a small fraction. Lynching also doesn't include the act of arson. So there are many individuals, even though like there were public burnings where persons, there's an individual named Claude Neal. Had probably one of the more gruesome public lynchings that took place. He was in Florida, where we're not gonna go too much details. It's Sunday, and listen, it's been a hard week for some. We don't need to make it any harder, but he was fully dismembered. Just gruesome situation, and they burned him and sold sections of his body. In that particular instance, right, that is obviously they burned his body, but there were many individuals whom were locked in buildings. We know the Birmingham bombing of the young girls, but there's a lot of other individuals who would be locked in buildings and burned on fire, but those were not considered arsons, right? The arson, because technically speaking, so just to kind of give some context, and I think she's absolutely right, the word really is not large enough. So I think I often use the word terrorist attacks because that's exactly what these were. They were illegal acts by non-government officials playing God, playing the court system. And so I definitely would agree that lynching is really even too narrow of a word to describe the experiences that people went through. It was just a public spectacle that was a smaller of a larger issue of just overall racial caste violence within the southeastern states.
Well, that's history, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
As painful as it is.
Yes, and I'm sitting here thinking lynching and torching and burning, and how sometimes, as a great cook that I am, when I burn myself on the stove or something that's too hot, it's painful.
Just that little burn.
Just that little burn, and to just
My
imagine.
God.
That's why I was just sitting still.
And so, just if I can briefly, I don't know.
Go ahead.
So that's why this project was so important to me, because I could sit there for hours and just read stories that would make you cry, as horrible as they are. But the reality is, I know growing up in a family of people who have experienced lynchings first, second, third hand, my people didn't sit there and cry. Like, we told jokes, we laughed, we had a good time. We weren't coming home in despair, right? And so I said, you know what? Like, why do these people have joy when all of these history books tell me that their whole life was just down, despair, in the dumps? And so I looked for that joy. And this is kind of like left field, but one of my favorite quote unquote slave movies was Django, like Unchained. Like, and like the reason why people like Django is that he fought back. And so like I remember with my students and I, we were talking about Django, and I was like, this is not an offshoot. Like, this is not a rare situation. Like, Black people fought back. We talk about resistance. We talk about Harriet B. Tubman and all these individuals. So there has to be some Harriet B. Tubmans of lynching. There had to be some people who fought back like Django. And so, like, one of like my favorite guys, this individual, he became a bishop, William Henry Neal Turner, which is arguably the father of black nationalism, and he was known for having one of those like Western Bibles where like you open the Bible and it was a cutout of Smith and Wesson inside the Bible. He said he memorized the Bible, so he didn't need the pages; he just needed the gun. And in one of his papers, he bought a home with an individual in Florida. Believe it or not, it was outside of Monticello, Florida. It used to be a plantation, which is also really interesting. Different show. A lot of individuals after slavery would buy abandoned plantation homes and like move the whole family in. That, like I said, a whole nother show, different day. But I guess there were some people in the community that did not like that this black, what they call carpetbagger, was he's South Carolina. He's not carpetbagger, but that's what they called him because he wasn't from there. And he had bragged that he had shot over 7 Klansmen, including that he had some of their clothing with bloodstains on them. I mean, this guy was like I said, he was like the Django per se of his time, and he was not an offshoot. And so I think personally, that's why this particular history matters. There's agency in these communities, and I think also for current generation, this is not to provoke violence. This is to provoke agency, right? That you can't just sit there and have your lips out and just being like, this is horrible, woe is me, and they don't like me, and blah 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 blah. Like, these are people. This is a lineage of individuals who stood up for themselves, who fought back physically. But the book also shows most did not fight physically. Most fought politically or theologically, but they all fought. And so I think it just kind of goes against the narrative of like Black history being depressing and Black history being docile and weak. I've seen people wear shirts like, I am not my ancestors, which is like the dumbest thing in the world, because like our ancestors were like so much tougher than us.
They were so tough. Yeah.
Like
Brilliant,
you see, you like I'm around some people and danger pops off and they're hiding, and you have ancestors who are literally like, my great grandfather escaped slavery at 14, like who literally like crossed the terrains from North Carolina to Illinois. Like, I'm not even going to pretend to act like I'm stronger than Peter Blakely.
Yes.
Right. And so I would just say that I think these stories and more kind of reinforce the power of the experience. And I'm hoping that there's more and more particular narratives that come forth to show the agency within the community and the original I'll call it non-co-opted church before it became so mainstream. Everybody wanted to be friends with everybody. Everybody wanted to get a contract with Lifeway. Like before everybody was co-opted and selling out, like the church actually was that institution that was so radical. It was made illegal. Like in the earliest slave codes, like the earliest institution to be banned was the Black church in the southeastern states. Like, I mean, people love the church now. Like, I mean,
and then back then, like we were, even with your book, you know, the pulpit was used to tell the stories and the
unadulterated, and it was deemed a threat. Nowadays, it unfortunately is being co-opted in so many spaces. So I would just say, I think these stories are very important to tell, to give a whole truth of the nature. That's not to lessen the horror of the space. But who wants to watch a horror movie where someone just stands there screaming and gets
defenseless?
I'm a softie. I get scared. I can't watch too many scary movies. But when someone starts fighting back, that's my favorite part of the movie. Like, fight back, run, move. And so it's just to tell the story of people who just stood there like fish in a barrel and just got annihilated. Like, there's no other way to say it. I mean, that's just not the truth. That's not what happened. And I think when you can add some honesty, truth to the dialogue, it kind of puts in perspective of like why certain things still exist today, which includes like strong Black communities and such. So
absolutely. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, Simplicity family, I don't know about you, but I can't wait till this break is over. But we have to have a station break. Andrew, Renee, tell us what's going on in the community.
All right. Freedom Fun Gala. The NAACP Murfreesboro branch cordially invites you to their Freedom Fun Gala Black Tie Affair on Saturday, September 6th in the MTSU Student Union Ballroom. Doors open at 6:00 p.m. The theme for the event, freedom is non-negotiable. The fierce urgency of now. The event will include entertainment, fine dining and dancing, and community impact awards presentations. Individual tickets are $100 each. For more information, go to NAACP-Borough-freedomfund2025.eventbrite.com. Love Connection Ministries. Each and every Tuesday evening at 5:00 p.m., join the Love Connection Ministries and Team Tuesday at Oakland Restoration Church. That's at 530 North Manny Avenue in Murfreesboro, as they sow seeds of love, compassion, and a hot meal to those in need, according to Matthew 25. Email Team Simplicity Radio at yahoo.com for contact and donation information. To God be the glory for his provision. Attention seed sowers. Simplicity Radio is looking for seed sowers to bless our ministry so that we can continue to provide support for people in the community who need it most. If you would like to partner with us in our endeavors, you can donate via Cash App at $Simplicity with ANG, and it's ANGIE, or you can email us for additional information. Thank you in advance for supporting our initiative to help the Murfreesboro community. Simplicity Radio volunteers. We are looking to expand our Simplicity Network and are in search of volunteers who are experienced in the areas of media and events. If this is you and you are able to lend your time and creativity to our ministry, please email us at teamsimplicityradio@yahoo.com for details. Now, about next week's show. Join Team Simplicity next Sunday for a show from our For the Community series on Talk Topic, Radiance and Resilience, a conversation on skincare, self-care, and being self-aware with special guest Miss Brittany White. We're also excited to welcome Dr. Dwayne Risher, founder of Math is Money, an educational initiative empowering youth through financial literacy and numeracy skills. Both of our guests will bring a unique perspective on how confidence and care inside and out can transform lives. We will see you then for that conversation. Now back to tonight's Simplicity Sunday Talk Topic, Tongues of Fire, Black Preaching in the Face of Lynching with special guest, Dr. Aaron M. Treadwell.
I wanted to ask a question. My mind is going to your cover, your book cover.
Oh, yeah.
What does it look like?
Sure. So I'm going to just make a shameless plug. Can I do a shameless plug?
Do a shameless plug.
So you could literally go, and this is how cool the internet is. You could either just type my name and put Tongues of Fire right in Google, right? And then if you put it in there, I want to say, well, let's put my name in there as well, Aaron Treadwell. And the book is actually coming out through LSU, Louisiana State University Press. But if you could find it on the press website, you could find it on Amazon. You can even find it on Target. I don't know how long it's going to be in Target, but you can find it. you can find it at Target as well. Hey, you know what? If they're going to sell it, I'm gonna let them sell it
Now,
that's right.
If you click on the link, and I don't know if this is bad radio because I'm talking and some of the people can't see me, but they'll be able to just see the photo right there. And it was really interesting. I could spend the whole show on how I found, or better yet, art history, and how it's procured and curated. This was an oil painting that a woman did in 1919 out of Ohio, on the Ohio River Valley. And specifically what took place is that there was a lynching within the area. Yes, there were many lynchings that also took place in the mid-Atlantic, in the Midwest, and the Northeast. This particular lynching took place in Ohio. This woman actually painted this image of her pastor. And so you see like these really dynamic visuals that are taking place where you see someone preaching, and then behind him you'll see on the left this kind of angelic creature who's crying out as there's smoke going in the air. And then on the right side you'll see unfortunately bodies lynched, and then persons bearing said bodies, because that's something that people don't really think about. That's a book all its own. You know, after the lynching, right? It's not a situation where things just go back to normal. Persons have to take the bodies down. Persons take the bodies down. They bury the bodies. There's funerals, right, that are happened at the churches. And so I think this image kind of gives a good perspective ultimately on the holistic nature of lynching, that there is this gruesome experience on the right. There is what many persons in the church believe to be this theological experience taking place, where not only does God cry out on the side of the oppressed, but God is with those persons. And it's the responsibility of the preacher to speak on that, right? Not just speak on the experience, but to give context, to give a hope, right? And we even in these funerals, right, they were still talking about homegoing celebrations, right? And so to provide joy, to provide comfort, but also to provide a guarantee that it won't happen again, right? And what does that look like? And so that's what the image is. So we found something historic. I know nowadays AI is taking over. This is not AI. This was literally painted by a woman out of Ohio. It was found in an African-American museum out of Ohio River Valley. The picture literally was not on the wall. But I found the image on the websites. They dug in a closet. They found it. We went through the family trust, got the rights for it. It's pretty cool. But I wanted to find something to kind of give homage
Yeah,
to
that's awesome.
to a narrative even that had been overlooked, and so that's what the cover tries to replicate.
I can't wait to read it. So what do you want readers to take away from Tongues of Fire? I can see the fire in your eyes. You know, it's almost like read this book. You know, it's like you're bursting with the overflow already.
So I think there's a few different ways that you could look at, especially because this is a university press, so it's not something that many people could probably just sit down and consume. Even in a weekend, because it's deep. There's a lot of information going there, and a lot of the book is provided in an editorial fashion. So I was adamant that I did not want to tell the stories from my voice and just cite and quote the actual preachers. So a lot of the information is me giving background context, me introducing to the reader, there was this lynching that took place in this city, this state, in this area, this time. This is the backstory. Now, here is the actual sermon. Here is the actual response from the pastor. And it's their words.
Oh, my
So I think,
goodness.
in fact, I'm going in February to Big Bethel in Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if you're familiar with Big Bethel. A very historic church there. A good friend of mine, Jay Augustine, is the new pastor there. And we're doing a Bible study over the book. And so they're just picking a few of the different sermons every week, and we're going to essentially like that what they're doing. And again, like this is a book that obviously you can find in the highest levels of academia, but you can also do it in your church. And it's just literally just reading one of the particular responses, and then asking yourself, kind of contextualizing, say, okay, this is the event that took place. This is how that church responded then, and even like rhetorically asking yourself, how would my church respond? How would my spaces respond with some of the heinous acts? And even thinking like when Mother Emanuel took place in Charleston, South Carolina, and the shooting happened in Bible study, what was my church's response? Did we just show up the very next week like nothing happened? Did we respond? Did we change our policies? Did we address and speak on it? And I think what this shows is that even in the early 20th century, late 19th century, so like late 1800s, early 1900s, these churches were very interconnected. Like they knew what was happening across state lines before the internet, right? Before Google, before like widely distributed newspapers, people still knew what was going on. And so that also kind of goes to show that like the longevity of a lot of African American spaces was that they were adamant about being interconnected. It wasn't like, oh, well, if it ain't happening in Rutherford County, I ain't really worried about it. No, because if it's happening in Columbia, it could probably happen here. How about if it's happening in Bowling Green or it's happening in Missouri, right? And so these communities were very conscious and aware of what was happening across state lines and across regions. And they were immediately addressing what was happening in other places in their own congregations to prepare themselves. These people were in war. That's how they kind of internalized it. And so that would be my suggestion, to read the information. Like I said, it's kind of segmented by pastor and then by historical event and pastor response. And I would just read each response and then kind of chew on it, kind of meditate on it and say, okay, like this is what they've gone through. How like does this relate to me, like theologically, if you want to take it there, or historically, or even like socially? And if you're moved, a lot of these people they created social groups in response to said actions. And so the question is, the groups that I'm in, right? This is not me, but like I'm talking just in general. Maybe even asking yourself, the groups am I in, and when there's a horrible situation takes place, what would my groups do? Would we mourn? Would we raise money? Would we protest? Would we just say, well, we got this shoe ball coming up, so we don't want to lose our venue, so let's just we'll get this. We'll address this once we get our ball done. And so I guess just kind of inquire and using that to kind of maybe put some perspective, because the only reason these people survived is because of how not only that they responded, but how they prepared. And the reality is we may not survive our own battles. I don't know your battle, whoever is listening, but you won't survive your battle if your only method of action is responding, and what you'll see are proactive communities within this book.
I want to
like
read.
that.
I want to read a few really quick scriptures in succession. I think that when we talk about how churches and ministers are discussing those biblical truths, those historical truths, in today's time is very different.
Yes.
Some people kind of shy away from it because they want to play nice.
Mainstream.
But but we have to know these historical facts. We have to understand that they happen. We have to talk about them because they're not going to be discussed in your history books that everyone can access. So we have to communicate, even if it's on social media. That it's a lot on TikTok where they're talking about that stuff, and then it makes people uncomfortable. But we got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. All right, Psalm 94, 1-7, a cry for justice against the oppressors. Exodus 3, 7-10, I have surely seen the affliction of my people. Hebrews 11:36, a remembrance of those who suffered for righteousness. Revelation 6:9, the souls of the martyrs cry out from under the altar. We have so many scriptures that address exactly what was going on during those times. And we can't hide from it. We have to address it. If you're uncomfortable, good. Let's have the conversation.
And I think it's interesting that both sides were waving the same Christian flag of this particular battle, right? And so I do think that, I mean, even in your perspective, because a lot of, and this is a different conversation, but I think a lot of individuals are misguided when they'll make claims that say, well, you know, I don't go to the church, or I don't believe in Christianity because, you know, how can you believe in Christianity when, you know, Christianity, like the very first slave Dutch ship was named Jesus, like the literally the first slave ship was literally named Jesus, or you know, how can you be a Christian when you know, Nathaniel Bedford Forrest and the Klan identify themselves as a organization with Christian morals.
Right.
I said, well, you know, like Paul talks a lot about false prophets, or false prophecy, right? And the reality within this book is you see that theologically, the word literally meaning the ology study of, and then theos is God in Latin. So it's how one studies and identifies God. I think what this book also shows is that there is a clear distinction of how said persons are interpreting and understanding not only God, but the word translated Latin imago Dei, or made in the image of God. People see themselves in God, and their image that they're seeing is different than maybe the image that is attacking them. And so I think ultimately, to go along with what you're saying, absolutely, I think it's very important to understand we've come a mighty long way. I don't want to get on this high horse and forget all of the progress that has been made.
Right.
But what this book does is it shows us that nothing comes out of nothing, that like that ultimately there has to be work in progress. And yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. This particular literature is not going to probably be in the Tennessee State history book, because the content is deeper, it's heavier, and some, you know, definitely not probably suitable for a person in middle school or elementary school to a certain way because of how it's presented in the book, and the verbiage and words and things like that. But in addition to that, I do think that it gives us a particular platform in which we should identify that, especially when you talk about African American culture, African American history, the African American church, African American social groups, that these were proactive spaces that fought back. And so every fight's different, but like fighting nonetheless.
Right.
And it makes, to kind of go full circle, it makes Django less of like this fictional history that was sensationalized or whatever to depict something that never really happened, and to like more of the norm. And so, you know, when you hear stories like Denmark Vesey and Gabriel Presser, or maybe even most notably like Nat Turner, they become less of an uncomfortable, rare narrative and more of the understanding that, like even my kids, well, I won't talk about my kids, I talk about myself. Mine was a very much like spare the rod, spare the child. So even in my own house, this is not a perfect metaphor whatsoever, but when I was in trouble, my parents were old generation. They came in with a belt.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't
Now,
stand
come
there.
on.
They may have told me to stand there, but I ran. No, I ran. I ran and I
Protect
hid.
yourself. Wait a minute.
And so I think it's almost dangerous to create these histories where black people stood there and accepted brutality. There's not one group within the entire annal of history that has just stood and received received oppression. Now things have been systematized and all that other stuff, but no. In fact, somebody named Ralph Abernathy wrote, his dissertation and ultimately a book. There were over 400 slave rebellions that took place just within 100 years within American history. There's an individual named David Eltis. He made the slave voyages, which started at Emory when I was at Emory for grad school. Now it's at Rice. And over 15% of slave voyages had some form of rebellion and death. So if you kind of normalize the process of rebellion and fighting back, then you normalize the understanding that people, especially who are socially disadvantaged over history, have not been punching bags, have not been just weaklings. And I think fortunately it's a situation where this history is still available to go back and retrieve it. And I think that's kind of my intention and my purpose, to kind of provide more authenticity to the narrative. It's not to sway anyone in any way.
Yeah.
But just give the people the full story and let them make their decisions based off of that.
The truth, yes. And when you brought up Abernathy, he was known as the quiet hero. Everybody wasn't, as voiced out to say, I'm going to get you. He just did it.
Right.
Like you said, and this is more in our history than we realize. And I do believe that's what your book is bringing out as well.
Yes.
What advice would you give to these young preachers how to deal with social injustices from the pulpit?
Sure, I would say first read
and then get your book.
Okay.
Preachers, I'm going to say this. In your congregations, get the book and do Bible studies and book studies around it and create scenarios, because we need to be empowered about our own history.
Yeah, so I would first say read, and I don't mean just my book, just just read information and beyond the King James.
Yeah.
In fact, stop reading King James, read the NRSV so you can make sure you understand every word. Because the thous and the thus and the saiths.
Right.
I think some people don't even understand the words they're saying. And then I would say actually read books, so have a healthy relationship with the library to expand your mind and add more context. Including the history. I think it's something that a lot of people like to dabble in and talk about, but maybe have some perspectives that are somewhat frail because they're not standing on a full contextual space. And so I would say definitely read, and then also when you read, actively discern the information you're taking in. So asking yourself questions in terms of how would I respond to an event like such. And unfortunately, some of these atrocities are becoming normalized.
Right.
There was an individual named Jacqueline Olive I brought on campus 6 years ago now. She had a particular documentary on PBS about a lynching that took place in 2012. So these instances are happening more and more frequently. Life is too short to make another person's mistakes. Read books, learn your history, and then you can apply it socially, theologically, contextually, whatever G you want to add in there. I think it's going to make and create a stronger space in which you can preach on something.
And how can our listeners get your book?
So, I'm an Amazon head. I like Amazon simply for some of the perks. That, and it gives you suggestions of stuff you don't need but you think you need. So you can go on Amazon, Louisiana State University Press. I know I have an FSU shirt on. I literally came back from the game yesterday. Go Noles, beat Great South Alabama. I had to get that shameless plug in. But you can go to LSU. That's Louisiana State University Press, and you can literally type my name. They're just selling the hardcover right now. So one of the things they do is, in the book sells well enough, they go from the hardcover to the paperback. And those of you who are, avid readers, you can literally buy the Kindle version. I think it's about half the price. And if you are in a church or organization and you want to do a book club, orders of 10 or more, there is a discount. I can't tell you it online because, I would hope, but my line might blow up. But there is a significant discount if you ordered it in bulk. And that is still for the hard copy. So Louisiana State University Press, you go on Target, you can go on Amazon. You can go online and it's there for you. The end of October 29th is when it's going to start shipping out to people's doors.
Okay.
Awesome.
Dr. Trey, well, yeah, move your head a little bit out of that mic so they can see how handsome you are.
Oh, Lord have
So
mercy.
and he has a beautiful family, a beautiful wife, and we want to thank everybody. How did this time go away? We're not out of talk, but we are out of time. He will be back, and we want everyone to understand that you are somebody. Know your history. Embrace it. And then we want to see you here next Sunday at 6 p.m. Central Time. And we want to say, simplify your life with Jesus Christ.
Amen, amen.
And simplicity is not for sometimes, it's for a lifetime.
Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Treadwell.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
That was
Andrew
awesome.
Renee. Thank
Awesome.
you, Connor.
Thank you.
And people, be safe on tomorrow
Yes.
on your celebrations. God bless.
Good night.
Good night.